starting with Chapter 3. When the village well dried up, many people left. They didn't know that a few years later, the 3 villages nearby would gather and search for water. The gathered villagers built 2 new wells, and though one of them dried up in the next decade, the one that still had water was about an hour's walk out of the way of June's path. With a lighter cart and an empty cask, June planned on stopping there, even if it meant she'd get caught in the scorching sun before she made it home. Now that she was finally out, it felt too early to return. June was more than halfway to her village and about to turn off for the well when the sky changed. The sun had already turned it pink, but it all faded back to black. A glance up revealed large, dark clouds. She hadn't seen clouds like that since the day the dragon died. It felt so long ago that she could have dreamed it. The sky broke. A bright flash blinded June only for a moment, and then everything shook. There was a rumble so loud that June felt it rush down her throat, into her stomach, and rattle her bones. When it started raining, it came down in sheets. In seconds, June was soaked. While the first drops of rain felt amazing, it soon became so cold. There was no shelter, nothing at all on the deserted road, and with her age, a sickness from the cold could kill her easily. Shelter. The well, with its tiny roof, was too far, but the dried husks of the forest appeared like black skeletal bones on the horizon every time the lightning flashed. With her luck, lightning would strike and become that spark that scared the village head into wanting to burn the forest. However, the rain was so strong that she wasn't worried. June opened the cask to fill with rainwater and left her cart behind as she ran for the forest. The ground was slippery and muddy, and she fell too many times to count, but then she made it. The forest trees were all long dead, not a single purple flower on them, and many of them broken. It was not enough to keep her hidden from the rain. It was dark, other than the occasional flash from when lightning struck, and June quickly found herself deep in the barren woodland. She hadn't been in it in such a long time, but she remembered a cave, not that far in, where she could hide until the rain stopped. Unfortunately, she never made it that far, because she tripped over something soft and fell face first on the ground. The something soft behind her grunted. June was able to ignore the pain from her fall only due to the fear that froze her. It was too dark to see anything at all, but she still turned slowly to see what she would have to run from. Lightning flashed, and instead of a mound of mud or even a nest of rattlesnakes, she was staring at an unconscious man. Chapter 4. For some reason, June ended up hiding the man's existence from the rest of the villagers. Not that it was hard. The only one that ever bothered her was Casey, and it was easy enough to turn him away the one time he visited her that first week. During that week, June took care of the young man. One of his wounds developed an infection that she had to clean with expensive aloe, multiple times a day. He also had a fever, forcing June to stay awake most of the day and use some of her precious water to keep his head cool. She used up so much water to take care of him that she was glad the rain had filled up her cask to the top. The rest of the time, she fed him sweet cactus soup and changed the sheets regularly. It was another week later, with June finally ready to go ask Casey for help, that her mysterious guest finally woke up. June was not at home at the time. She was out, walking the village with her mama's old cart and collecting wearables for mending. When June entered her home after collecting everything, it was to an open bedroom door. She immediately tensed. A glance around the main room revealed nothing at all. Not unless the man was hiding behind one of her towers of items. With wary steps, she went into the bedroom. He was sitting up in the bed, looking at the wall. When he heard her, he turned to look at her. June froze under that amethyst gaze, and all she could see was the old forest and lavender fields. Hello there. June started and cleared her throat. She searched her apron for a pair of knitting needles that she knew weren't there. My name's June. You're safe here. The man did not say anything or look away from her. I found you in the forest. You were wounded and didn't wake up for about 2 weeks, June explained. I mean, the wounds weren't that bad, except for the one that got infected. It was probably when I had to drag you through the mud. You're a skinny thing, but I can only carry you for so long, and June cut herself off as soon as she realized she was rambling. The man didn't say anything at all, and his stare was starting to unnerve her. Uh, I'm June. Wait, no, I already said that. Anyway, what's your name? No response. Can you speak? Nothing. Can you even understand me? He nodded, and June almost jumped to the roof in fright. Then she realized how stupid that was. The man responded, and she was ready to flee her own house for it. But you don't speak. I speak, he finally said. His voice was low, hoarse, clearly unused for a long time. It reminded her of Casey's drawl when his sons annoyed him, and he kept his lips busy with cigarette after cigarette. Usually, by the end of the night, he would be sick from so much tobacco, but his voice had that same raspy feel. It was nice. If you can speak, June started again, gaining some confidence, then it would be nice to answer my questions, no? Here I am, almost literally breaking my back. I'm an old woman, you know. There's only so much I can do. And you've yet to even say thank you. For what? He asked, and it sounded so haughty. For what? June sputtered out. For taking me home? What? Did you want something? The man hadn't moved at all, but it felt like he was towering over her. If you didn't notice, I have nothing on me. I have no way to pay you for your kindness. What? I'm not asking for payment, June snapped back. Wow, you're an annoying one. Some little lordling who got caught by sand bandits? What, they take everything from you, even your clothes? Huh. It was so much easier to be offensive than to build a strong defense with her words. Oral. What? My name. It's Oral. Well, I'm June, she repeated once more. Weaver, she added, and motioned around the room as if that explained anything. And it did. Multiple of her weaves, and her mother's before her, were strewn about or hanging off the walls. June squinted at him and looked him over. As she ran her gaze critically down from his purple eyes to his long nose, pointed chin, delicate neck, protruding collarbones, then he hid her view of his chest when he brought the blanket up, as if trying to keep his modesty. Ha! Oh, please! June scoffed and waved a hand in the air. Who do you think has been wiping your ass for the past week? If I wanted to cop a feel, I had plenty of opportunities. Suddenly, the man's entire face turned redder than a sunburn after being out in the middle of the day. It was cute. Look, I'm not good at this whole conversing thing. More the ending the conversation part of it, actually. So I'm going to step out, collect some clothes for you, and bring them back in. Can you get dressed on your own? Oral was still blushing, clutching his blanket tight, but he nodded. Good. June walked out. She had a lot of clothes lying around, but she had plans for most of them, even if some of those plans were a few decades old. Instead of ruining any of her carefully organized piles, she dug through the discarded clothes the villagers had given her that she could not fix to their liking. There was an old pair of sleeping trousers that would probably be short on him, and a simple blouse that may be a bit tight on his shoulders, but it would do. If only he could ignore the horrible embroidery on the collar that, apparently, looked like dancing penises. She deposited the clothes on the edge of the bed and then pointedly left the door wide open when she stepped back out into the main room. As soon as she was at the stove, she called out, "Does your stomach feel strong enough for some bread?" She received no answer, but she knew she wanted some bread for herself. If Oral, and what an interesting name that was, he was clearly not from around here, even if his colorings were enough to confirm that, was unable to stomach the bread, she'd take his share. Mealtime was a silent affair. June usually ate either at her workstation or on the porch, but it was too close to sunrise and people would be returning home from work. In the end, she sat at her loom with a plate in one hand, while Oral sat in the corner of her sofa. He looked horrible in the clothes she gave him, but he was still handsome. Most of his wounds were also healed already, or at least scabbed over, so he even looked somewhat healthy. While June was cleaning her plate, there was a knock. She looked back at Oral, the young man eating so slow that it was painful to watch, and noticed him flinch. Then Casey's voice came through the wood, announcing himself as if it could have been anyone else. June quickly wiped her hands and then rushed Oral. "Get up!" she hissed. "What?" "Shh! Quiet! Get up! Get in the bedroom!" She tried to guide him back into the room, but he was being stubborn and slow about it. Casey clearly heard something from their scuffle because his tone changed to a worried one. "Are you okay? Did you fall?" "I'm not that old, Casey Brewer," June snapped back loudly, and Oral flinched under her hands. Fine. Whatever." June threw her hands up in the air and stomped over to the door. There was no point in actually hiding the young man. She threw the front door open just in time to hear her bedroom door close. "What is it?" June asked with a growl of annoyance in her voice. "Are you all right? You look not good." "Well, thank you. I haven't slept well recently," June explained without lying, and shifted to block Casey's view of the sofa, where she had been sleeping since taking Oral in. It was too hot, even with all the curtains drawn, and she hadn't had a full day of sleep in a while, on top of her complaining back. "What is it? It'll be sunrise soon." "Ah, yes, I know. Sorry. I know you said you'll be busy for the next few days, but there's a messenger from the capital, in person. I figured none of the others would." "What are you standing around for? Come on, let's go." Gently nudging Casey out of her doorway and down to the street was much easier than shoving Oral into her bedroom, even though Casey was at least twice as wide. There was a funny thought. "Do you know what it's about?" June asked when she saw the small crowd gathering in the village's circle. "Probably the rain," Casey answered with a smirk over his shoulder. June rolled her eyes and pushed him again, harder this time. He almost lost his balance, his wooden leg not fast enough to catch him, but June steadied him with a hand under his elbow and quickly pulled it back before he could say anything. The woman from the capital was gorgeous. Her entire face was painted white, making her stand out against the crowd around her, except for her red lips and the kohl around her eyes. She was dressed in the same red as her lips, in long robes with a beautiful golden embroidery of clouds and rivers. Her long, dark hair was tied back in an intricate braid, and she had golden rings through her nose, eyebrows, and lips. She was already speaking by the time June heard her strong voice. "The last dragon died. The entire country has been plagued by droughts and famine. It has been very hard on all of us, especially those smaller places like you without mages at your disposal. Fortunately, we finally have good news from multiple mages around the nation. As soon as the Empress knew it, she sent out an order that even the smallest of villages under her rule know it too." The woman paused, as if for dramatic effect. Then her volume increased as she said, "The Chosen One has awakened."